We have a lot of characters in Game of Thrones who have achieved great things. Most impressively, we have a man who was able to stop the 300-year dynasty of the Targaryens. No, not him. I'm talking about the one and only King Aerys Targaryen II, aka the Mad King. And we're going to attempt to find out why he went mad. There are many existing theories about why the Mad King went mad. Was it Bran Hodoring the Mad King? Maybe it was genetics. Maybe he was destined to become mad. Or maybe he was turned mad by someone who wanted him replaced. First, let's take a brief look at his history. Aerys Targaryen became king when he was only 18 years old. He had the desire initially to be the greatest king ever. He wanted to do wonderful things to be remembered by. And to his credit, no one's going to forget him. One of his first acts as king was to replace his king's council with fresh blood. Most notably, he brought on his best friends, Tywin Lannister and Steffon Baratheon, Robert's father. This is probably the only wise decision he ever truly made as king. Aerys loved being king, but for the wrong reasons. He liked the spectacle of it. He went from kingdom to kingdom, making great promises about their future. He wanted to build another wall, or make the deserts bloom in Dorne. He enjoyed his life, maybe too much. He enjoyed singing and dancing, while Tywin was the one who ran the Seven Kingdoms for him and did the job very well. But slowly Aerys began to realize that Tywin was the one getting the most respect from the people, and people began to believe, perhaps rightfully, that Tywin was the true ruler, and Aerys was simply the puppet. So Aerys decided to act better than Tywin. And when I say better, I mean do the exact opposite of everything Tywin wanted to do. He became incredibly immature. If Tywin enacted a law, the Mad King overturned it. If Tywin supported a house in a dispute, Aerys would support the other house. This all came to a head in an event that is known as the Defiance of Duskendale, in which a lord wanted to receive more power from the crown. The lord went to Tywin with his request, and Tywin shot him down. The lord then decided to go to Aerys because he knew that the two didn't have the best relationship, and he might be able to convince Aerys to support him simply to spite Tywin. The lord invited the king to his castle, and also withheld payments to the crown until he was able to talk to Aerys. Aerys was about to refuse the invitation until Tywin told him to refuse. After that, Aerys had to go just to prove Tywin wrong. Long story short, it was all a trap.
It's a trap!
The king was kidnapped, and the lord threatened to kill the king if he didn't get what he wanted from Tywin, who was then acting as king. After 6 months of captivity, Barrister Selmy snuck into the castle and saved the king, and the lord responsible for the kidnapping and his entire family was killed. After that, the king became incredibly paranoid. He blamed Tywin because he thought that he left him to rot in the dungeon. He never left the Red Keep. He had food tasters for his fear of poison. He didn't even leave for his own son Rhaegar's wedding because he was so paranoid. He became obsessed with wildfire and started executing people using wildfire. And he brought Varys to be his master of spies. He thought that he could only trust a person who had no family, no ties to Westeros, and no, well, you know. The final straw, of course, was burning Ned's big brother and father, which officially started the rebellion. After that, the story's pretty well known. He lost the war, Tywin tricked him and sacked the city, Jaime killed him, and, well, all hail King Robert Baratheon. Now, let's move on to the theories about why he went mad. After what Bran did to Hodor, people started speculating where else he could have affected the past. One of the better options was that he made Aerys go mad. This theory gained some strength after we saw Bran have the flashback about the Mad King. The problem is, there are many issues with this theory. First, it's pretty well established in the show that Bran can warg into animals only, and Hodor was an exception because he is dim-witted. So unless something changes, he cannot do the same thing to Aerys. Part of what caused the Hodor stuff was that he was near the real Hodor and the Hodor from the past at the same time. Another thing that cannot happen, and why would Bran try to contact the Mad King anyway? Why not his father or the Night's Watch commander at the time? I cannot see how the Mad King would have stopped the White Walkers. There's a small concession I'm willing to have, but let's get to that later on. Right now, Bran did not drive the Mad King crazy. Now, the other option is that he was driven crazy by someone else. My first thought was Varys, because of the theory that Varys might be a secret Blackfire, which is, in short, a house that is descended from a Targaryen bastard who fought for control of the Iron Throne and had 5 rebellions to take the Iron Throne, and in the 5th and final rebellion, Barristan Selmy killed the last male Blackfire. But the female line stayed alive, and there's a theory that Varys is a descendant from the female line. Anyway, back to the option that he drove the Mad King crazy. This falls short very quickly, because he came in way too late, and the Mad King was already crazy at that point. Another possible option is Tywin. We know that Tywin would use anything to get what he wants. He saw the problem that Aerys posed for the kingdom, and, more importantly, for the Lannister name. Because don't think that the ridicule that Aerys threw Tywin's way didn't affect the Lannister name and reputation in the Seven Kingdoms, and we know just how important the Lannister reputation is for Tywin.
Might be the lowest of the Lannisters, but he's one of us. And every day that he remains a prisoner, the less our name commands respect. Your mother's dead. Before long I'll be dead. And you. And your brother. And your sister. And all of her children. All of us dead. All of us rotting in the ground. It's the family name that lives on. It's all that lives on.
Is it far-fetched to think that he would do things to purposefully exploit Aerys' fears and paranoia to drive him crazy? Unfortunately, there's no proof or evidence for this theory, and I think that even if it is true, it only happened after Tywin's wife died. A more likely possibility is that it was Grandmaster Pycelle acting for Tywin without Tywin's knowledge, something we saw him do in the show a few times. This is more likely because the Mad King listened to Pycelle up until the bitter end, so it's possible that he fed him false information to drive him insane. Though both Tywin and Pycelle driving the Mad King crazy is a possibility, I think the most likely possibility is that being king drove him crazy. Let me explain. Aerys was basically a spoiled kid who was not fit to be king, but wanted to be king really badly. He expected everything to be easy. He wanted to be loved and admired without putting in any effort. So at the start, everything was fine. Tywin did the work, and he did as he liked. He promised great things, he slept with any woman he chose, and enjoyed the bootlicking he received from the other lords. Slowly, though, he started noticing that people looked at Tywin as the man who ran the kingdom, and not him. And, like the spoiled rich kid he was, he started acting immaturely, doing stupid things just to prove that it was him that was king, and not Tywin. The problem was, he did those stupid things, and people started to hate him for them. He was not accustomed to handle that hatred, and he blamed Tywin for the people turning on him. He started hearing talks of people wanting to replace him with his son, a son he felt no connection to. His son Rhaegar was much more like his own father, Jaehaerys Targaryen II, the man who himself wed for love, but forced his son to wed his sister, a woman he didn't love, just because of the prince that was promised prophecy. Like him, Rhaegar was also obsessed with the prophecy, and they were both bookish people. Then, when Jaime and Cersei were born, Aerys' jealousy for Tywin grew. His sister-wife was not able to give him any more children other than Rhaegar. Each baby they had either died at birth, or she miscarried. But Tywin got twins. Then Tywin went to Casterly Lock for their birth, and the king decided to go with him. This drove his envy for Tywin over the edge. Seeing him happy with his wife, a woman the king used to lust for in the past, Tywin, the man who couldn't smile, happy, and he was stuck with his own sister. When they returned to King's Landing, things changed. He stopped listening to Tywin entirely. He fell more and more into despair and paranoia, thinking people wanted to replace him with his son and seeing him as a puppet for Tywin. Then he had a kid, and some happiness returned to his life. One of his goals was always to have a large amount of children and restore the Targaryen lineage to its best days. But in the same year, that child died, and this broke him. After finally having some happiness, it was all taken away from him, and he blamed everyone. So when Viserys was born a few years after, instead of being happy, he was afraid for his life, afraid that he would be taken away from him as well. So after all the children he lost, he became even more paranoid. He put guards with Viserys all the time and didn't let anyone go near him. Then, a year later it happened, the final straw to break Aerys' insanity. An act that proved to him, in his mind, that all of his paranoia was justified. He was actually kidnapped and imprisoned for half a year. If you think he was crazy then, oh, you just wait. He started to refuse to cut his hair and nails because of fear of sharp objects. He refused to leave the Red Keep. He brought Varys with him, which only helped feed his paranoia, because at this point, people actually were aiming to replace him as king. And that's how being king drove the king mad. Now I want to return to something I said earlier about Bran. I'm willing to agree that while having his dreams, Bran might have seen the Mad King burn his grandfather and uncle, or more likely, he saw that the king was about to burn the city after Tywin sacked it, and Bran said to him, "Don't burn them," and the Mad King only heard, "Burn them." And I do think there's a lesson to be learned from the Mad King, one we might see in the show. It's something the wildlings already learned. Rulers should be chosen, and not simply given power. Not everyone can handle power, and it can drive people crazy. I think this is something we're going to talk about in future videos, that Westeros will learn from the wildlings. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. In my opinion, there's no great conspiracy behind every event in Game of Thrones. Some stuff just happens. If you liked the video, like and subscribe. And if you want to talk Game of Thrones or other TV shows, tweet me at @WatchersPod. And as always, have a great day.